Welcome to An Alternate Hugh. I'm Hugh Anderson, and this is what caught my attention recently. No potholes for you. That's right. The many times delayed infrastructure bill was finally passed, as you hopefully have heard. As always, I remain confused. House passes $1 trillion infrastructure bill was the headline reported by the New York Times. Reuters, the LA Times, The Hill, CNBC, and NPR all went with this $1 trillion figure. However, the Washington Post, Axios, CNN, Vox, and USA Today reported that Congress had passed legislation costing $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years. 20% difference. In a hint at the underlying problem, the Post hedged by prefacing its figure with the word roughly. Meanwhile, NBC and Bloomberg News put the figure at $550 billion, which is a much different deal, with Bloomberg asserting that it's only $550 billion in new spending. I'm sure Congress knows how much they spent, right? Right? An analysis by the Wall Street Journal clarifies that the infrastructure bill is really two bills in one. First, of course, a reauthorization of existing federal spending on highways and transit, and second, brand new spending on highways, transit, Amtrak, electric vehicles, airports, ports, clean water, clean energy, and broadband. About half of the transportation dollars in the bill are dedicated to Amtrak and urban transit, modes of transportation that carry less than 1% of passenger traffic and no freight. While the other half appears to be dedicated to highways, much of that will be spent on projects that will reduce, not maintain or increase roadway capacities. All of this is based on a presumption that automobiles are evil, and the primary goal of government should be to wean Americans off the automobile and get them into various forms of government-owned mass transportation. Even if you believe that automobiles are a major contributor to global climate change, many states and cities have made enormous efforts to get people to reduce their driving since 1970, and all of them have failed. States are already lining up to get some of the $66 billion that the bill included for Amtrak. But even if the bill had spent twice that on Amtrak, it wouldn't have significantly increased passenger train ridership. In most of the markets where Amtrak wants to expand service, airlines and/or bus companies already provide excellent service at fares that Amtrak won't be able to match even with all its subsidies. In the Journal's humble opinion, transit and intercity passenger trains are obsolete technologies that only survive because of giant taxpayer subsidies. They personally love passenger trains, but don't think they should be subsidized any more than Tom Hanks, who collects manual typewriters. Good one, Tom. Manual typewriters. The bill also includes $65 billion for rural broadband based on overestimates of how many people lacked access to high-speed internet. According to the White House, which originally proposed this spending, more than 30 million Americans live in areas where there is no broadband infrastructure. But according to the Federal Communications Commission, only 21 million Americans lacked access to fixed terrestrial broadband in 2019, and all of those had access to satellite broadband if they wanted it. The main beneficiaries of this $65 billion will be broadband companies and high-income exurbanites. All of this spending is on top of the three coronavirus relief bills passed by Congress in April and December 2020 and March 2021, which included more than $116 billion for transportation. Some 59% of the transportation dollars in those bills, or $69 billion, was dedicated to transit systems that had lost more than half of their riders due to the pandemic. In retrospect, considering the supply chain problems we're experiencing today, that money should have been spent on freight transportation instead. The infrastructure bill does include $17 billion for ports, but most of this will be too little, too late to solve today's supply chain problems. The real lesson of this bill is that the government shouldn't be involved in funding marketable services like transportation and broadband, as it is too likely to get captured by entrenched interests while it ignores real problems. There are still those who believe Congress should fund a high-speed rail network, but recent news about China's high-speed rail systems provide another lesson about government failure. China has twice as many miles of high-speed rail lines as the rest of the world combined. To build those lines, China's state railways and provincial governments had gone trillions of dollars into debt. Some of China's high-speed rail lines earn less in ticket revenues than the cost of the electricity used to power those lines, and the system is losing $44 million per day. To help pay for the lines, China State Railways has increased freight rates 11 times so that it now costs twice as much to ship freight by rail as by truck, compared with less than one-fourth as much in the United States. As a result, the share of freight moved by rail has declined from 50% in 2005 when China began building high-speed rail to 17% in 2016 and probably less today. Some experts in China believe that China's high-speed rail program will lead to a debt crisis far worse than the Evergrande crisis, which was manufactured by the government to punish wealthy housing developers. Americans can count ourselves fortunate that we at least dodged this bullet train. And according to both the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget and the Congressional Budget Office, the legislation is not fully paid for, and will add to the nation's deficit. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. And finally, we have this. In a recent survey, when it comes to customer satisfaction, financial advisors don't rate quite as high as breweries. Why am I not surprised? That's it for now. Don't forget to look for some more thoughts from Hightower Las Vegas on social media. I'm Hugh Anderson, and this has been An Alternate Hugh.